For sure. Hey, thanks for joining us this evening on Weather Unfiltered, everyone. I'm Mike Bettis.
I'm Alex Wilson. Of course, our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knablich, the artist formerly known as the Sunshine State.
Yeah, and well, you know, we got a lot of tropical moisture. At least we don't have a lot of tropical cyclones. An unexpected lull at the peak of the season, but we'll talk in a little while about how, as usual, it's not going to last forever.
Yeah, but who would have thought on September 8th, no tropical development expected would be the headline?
Like, this is the peak week, typically, historically, when we see the most activity. So we're facing a break.
I remember a week just like this one in the past, and then later in the show, I'm going to tell you how the rest of that season turned out.
I don't know if I want to.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be what I want to hear. But anyway, stay tuned for that. In the meantime, let's take you to that. But before we get there, let's take you to a very soggy virtual view of Jacksonville, Florida. Of course, showers and thunderstorms will bring some of those downpour potentials that could lead to standing water. You know, the little ponding here near the St. Johns River. All right, coastal flood advisories, they are also up and down the coast. So we get down to Flagler Beach, up into sections of southeast Georgia. So these coastal areas do have that coastal flood threat as well. You can see the onshore wind here, and it's gusty. Right now, winds around 24 miles an hour in St. Augustine, gusting to 36 miles an hour. And we've also seen some of those stronger gusts around Jacksonville, Fernandina Beach, and also St. Simon's Island. Not quite as strong as at St. Augustine, more in that 20 to 25 mile per hour range, but still gusty winds out there. And again, that onshore push is leading to that coastal flood danger. Beaufort, North Carolina, you're gusting to near 30 miles an hour. And meanwhile, Myrtle Beach, not much of a gust right now. When we look at Mayport, Florida, and the tide cycle, we've got high tide of concern. Of course, 10:25 tomorrow morning, still dealing with that onshore flow. So that in combination with the high tide could lead to those coastal flood issues. And that's why we've got those warnings posted. Wind gust forecast into tomorrow morning here at 10 o'clock. We've got plenty of gusts in that 20 to 30 mile per hour range from Atlantic City to Virginia Beach, all the way down to Savannah and Jacksonville, Florida. So up and down the East Coast, those winds are going to be kicking to start the day. And of course, we watch the coastal areas. Now, wind gusts into parts of the Northeast, or really mid-Atlantic and then the Northeast. They'll start to pick up in the mid-Atlantic tomorrow morning. And you can see even towards the end of the week, staying a bit breezy. Friday afternoon, expect those breezes 15 to 20 miles an hour in Martha's Vineyard and East Hampton, also down to Wildwood and Ocean City. Coastal gauges in flood. This is the forecast here moving forward, expecting minor to moderate across sections of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast, Mike.
All right, Alex, thank you very much for that.
Severe weather. You know, we've got flash flood warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings across sections of Kansas currently. So Wichita, you just had some big-time thunderstorms rolling through to the south and west. We've got a little bit more in the way of severe activity up 135, frequent lightning, very heavy rain there. And in the wake of that heavy rain, we've got a few flash flood warnings that linger. So the available energy has been high and the temperatures have been up. Notice, though, as that rain shield moves through, the temperatures drop significantly. So southerly flow today has continued to bump up the warmth and, of course, the moisture. And so these thunderstorms have had that available energy to work with. 5 to 10 degrees below average tomorrow across the east. Meanwhile, notice some sections of the plains will have those above average temps, 5, 10, 15 degrees above the mark. Now, by Thursday, we rebound again. Now we're 5 to 15 degrees above average for a lot of Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, and also the Dakotas. So noticing that warmth building back in, but followed by the chill. You can see a little more blue on the map, kind of chasing the red. Saturday, warm day for Minneapolis, for Des Moines, for Kansas City, even approaching places like Chicago. I think greater departures over towards like a Paducah area. But here for fall football games, we may be, dealing with a little higher warmth than we would hope. Columbia, Missouri, your one location. Louisiana, Ragin' Cajuns, now they're used to the heat and humidity, so they won't have an issue. But as they take on Mizzou, we've got temps in the low 90s, likely with a mix of sun and clouds. So again, a little bit maybe more humidity and heat than you'd prefer for college football. Jonesboro, Arkansas, Iowa State taking on the Red Wolves from Arkansas State. This one's also a hot one. We expect temperatures into the mid-90s, plenty of sunshine. So especially if your seats are in the sun, hydrate, 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 hydrate. That is the key. Little Rock average high this time of year is 87. We're going above the mark Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And notice it's like a stepping stone. Saturday is the warmest day of the bunch. So well above average by the start of the weekend. In Nashville, where the average high is 87, we're above the mark on Wednesday. We continue to climb into the start of the weekend. Saturday highs, Mike, around 93.
All right, thank you, Alex. We're coming up here on Weather and
Well, welcome back into Weather Unfiltered. Hurricane Kiko in the eastern Pacific has been really the headliner tropically here within the last few days. And we look back at Kiko's major kick at Category 3 or higher. We were talking about this a lot into last week. 90-plus hours this storm spent at or above a Category 3, so at major hurricane status. And, of course, we've continued to watch Hawaii farther down the line. Now, as continued to be the expectation, storm will be weakening, will not make landfall there, but will pass well to the north of the Hawaiian Islands. It also weakened significantly. Category 1 hurricane currently 85-mile-per-hour winds, pressure 990 millibars. So as it worked through some of those colder waters, we've seen the wind speeds go down, and obviously we are not looking at the same storm we saw last week. Remember when we were looking at the perfect eye? This thing looked amazing on satellite. Now it's going to be moving to the north, but it's not without any issues for the Hawaiian Islands. As it's moved through those cooler ocean waters, yes, we have seen the weakening, but there's going to be enough going on that we see, especially on the east-facing beaches, some of those larger swells, so big waves and dangerous rip currents. So keep that in mind if you're at the Hawaiian Islands. Dip in the jet stream is what's going to be picking up the system today, and again, guiding this to the north. Upper level winds will also shear it apart. So we're not going to be looking at, a major Hurricane Kiko as it moves off to the north. The worst impacts will track well to the north of Hawaii. But again, big waves, rough surf, dangerous rip current. You can see some showers in the forecast, but we will see other effects that Dr. Knapp's going to talk about courtesy of the storm.
Yeah, so let's break this down, Dr. Knapp, and how this wouldn't get in an unmarked one anywhere.
Well, I wouldn't either, but I definitely wouldn't do it in Vegas because you don't know where you're going to end up. Crazy in Vegas. I've heard some stories.
Jeez, you need to stop with those murder podcasts.
No, I actually have a friend who randomly got in an Uber
stop.
and he has a wild story.
Oh,
so,
boy.
I can't tell it on
You
TV.
should save that for a podcast.
Yes, I should. I should. I'll interview him. Hey, you are watching Weather Unfiltered. Gonna let you chew over that one over dinner. I'm Alex Wilson.
Hey, everyone. I'm Mike Bettis. We'll also be with our expert, Dr. Rick Knapp, coming up here in just a moment. Let's begin with a time lapse here from the
warm. So temperature-wise, they've got everything. But dogs on unicycles, we can get on board with that. We've got a little cool, we've got a little hot for you. Average high this time of year is in the mid-80s there in St. Louis. So tomorrow, a little bit below the mark, but then we are way back above the mark. We got upper 80s on tap for the second half of the week. By Friday, we're in the low 90s, mid-90s on Saturday. So again, across the Plain States, those Saturday collegiate football games, gonna be a little toasty. My advice is sell the ticket. I just don't like being hot, so sitting in aluminum stands or metal stands, I feel like it's aluminum, but it's like, it makes me feel like I'm on tin foil in the oven. So I totally get it. If you'd rather watch it at home, I feel like it's much more comfortable that way. Dips, I recognize I'm a fair weather fan. Dips in the jet stream over the Great Lakes and Northeast. Notice we don't get real significant dips, so that's going to keep cooler highs farther up to the north. Meanwhile, places like St. Louis do get rebounds back into the 80s, 70s for Indianapolis. Notice that jet stream now gets a little bit of a lump in it on the positive side. So the dip in the jet stream to the west gives way to a ridge into the central U.S. That's helping to build in high pressure, and that's helping those temperatures just continue to climb up and up. So, yeah, by Friday, a lot of 80s and 90s from Chicago to Memphis to North Platte, even Rapid City and Minneapolis. So even our spots well to the north where we've already had, quite a bit of chill, we got some warmer air coming back in. So this is what we were talking about. If you were watching me and Chris was like, it always fools you, right? We can't buy in on fall just yet. I think Dr. Knapp said the same thing last week, and here we are. They were right. Midwest, average last 90-degree day for Minneapolis would be October 10th, the 6th in Chicago, Indianapolis, Kansas City, portions of October, especially late October for those. Those are the latest. Now on average, about now. Well, here on September 8th, this is not any wording that we thought we would ever see on September 8th, right? We're just about there, a day or two away from the statistical peak of the hurricane season. No tropical development expected over the Atlantic.
No, and last week, this is not a break that we expected. In fact, the Hurricane Center had a 90% chance of that wave developing until we got to Friday, and then things started to get squashed.
I was going to say, everybody at home is going, what the heck happened?
Yeah. Now, as you can tell, how busy the East Pacific and Central Pacific still are. Another storm probably going to form the East Pack. the favorable conditions are right on our doorstep, but for reasons we don't fully understand, the favorable conditions aren't moving into the Atlantic long enough to support development. But again, we need to learn from history how quickly that can change.
We went through a big pause last year. Maybe it wasn't at this time, but it seems like things can snap back pretty quickly, though.
Yeah, last year is a very good reminder of how late September and October can be very, very bad, especially with the storms that form right on our doorstep. But when I started to think, because last year we had Francine right about at this time, you know, in the Gulf. But right now we've got nothing, and maybe not for a few days. Okay, when's the last time that happened? And when I was director at the Hurricane Center in 2016, let me show you how that season played out. You had 7 named storms June through September 3rd, you know, a little bit before now. And we had 3 of those hurricanes, one of them major that was out to sea. But then you had, like we've got this week, this peak of season, nothing. I mean, nothing. And we're scratching our chin a little bit. And then September stayed puzzling because for September to have 4 named storms, no hurricanes, and Julia was a pretty weak system. The deep tropics are dead for all of September. What is going on? Is the season over? Is the thing that people were legitimately asking. And that was not a good predictor of what the rest of the season was going to be. So starting September 28th, when Matthew formed, southernmost Cat 5, all the impacts in the southeast. We had 2 more majors after that. We had more majors after September 28th than we did the whole season up to that point. And a reminder that Matthew was bad.
Yeah, we remember the odd track with this one. It really almost
of how the peak of the season can have a lull that throws you a little bit for a loop. And I think the lull in the Atlantic is relatively short-lived. Now, the Climate Prediction Center last week's Tuesday, outlook, they were looking at the latter portion of the next week or so, maybe a chance of starting off the coast of Africa, and then in the week of September 17th, the conditions getting less favorable in the Pacific and then more favorable in the East Atlantic. Is that exactly how it's going to play out? They're going to have an updated outlook tomorrow. But what I will say is that the favorable conditions are moving quickly across the global tropics. And so you have these more frequent ups and downs and ups and downs. Now, I don't have a full explanation for why last week's system didn't develop, but I don't think we're going to get through all of September that way.
But you want to really still keep your eye mostly on the main development region, yes?
Yes, and the closer we get to October, right on our doorstep formations.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm Mike Bettis.
I'm Alex Wilson, of course, our expert, Dr. Rick Knabb, here in the house to talk tropics. Here we are at basically the peak of hurricane season, and there's nothing in the Atlantic.
Yeah, there's a lot of tropical moisture, obviously, just no tropical cyclones in the Atlantic Basin for now. And in a little while, I'm going to show you a season where this happened right at the peak. And I'm not talking about last year. We know what happened last year, and it got bad afterward. But another example of how the peak of the peak can fool you if it is quiet.
You heard
Don't think it's going to stay that way.
Yeah, so stay tuned for a little. I feel like this is like dad advice where you're like, don't think it's going to be that great, but it makes sense.
And in the end, dad's always right.
I know.
You're like, ugh.
They always are. They always are. Well, heavy rain caused significant flooding across parts. A little bit more at that soggy weather work week. We give you a virtual view of Jacksonville, Florida, looking a lot like this with the heavy downpours embedded within our thunderstorms. And of course, there's the coastal concerns as well. Coastal flood advisories up and down the coast from around Flagler Beach up into parts of southeastern and south central parts of the state of Georgia. Right now, we've got winds that have been especially gusty down near St. Augustine, gusting around 30 miles an hour with sustained winds of 23 miles an hour. Fernandina Beach, very similar, gusting to 29 miles an hour with sustained winds at 22 miles an hour. And that's an onshore flow. That's why we're concerned about the coastal flooding issues. Notice we've got the gusty winds up and down now in Beaufort, North Carolina. Not as much of an onshore flow, neither for Myrtle Beach nor for Myrtle Beach. Winds not gusting there, but Beaufort gusting to around 25 miles an hour. In Mayport, Florida, with that onshore flow, we got to be concerned about high tide. Of course, those coastal flood advisories go into tomorrow morning. High tide on Tuesday Tuesday, just before 10:30 local time. So highlighted it in blue because that's the time that we'll be watching. Again, that push of water onshore thanks to the wind as well playing a role. Atlantic City by tomorrow morning gusting 20 to 25 miles an hour, up to 30-mile-an-hour gusts in Virginia Beach. So up and down the coast, we'll have those gusty winds here. And notice through the day on Tuesday, we're going to keep that going. So expect those winds generally between 15 and 25 miles an hour with some higher gusts in there. All right, we look now at the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. So sections of New England, you'll turn a little gustier into tomorrow evening or late afternoon and evening. Notice Martha's Vineyard gusting up to 25 miles an hour. Later in the week, we'll also see some gusty winds. So parts of the coast, you'll stay a bit breezy to gusty even on Friday afternoon. Again, many areas 15 to 20-mile-an-hour gusts with some spots a little bit higher. Now, coastal gauges in flood stage. This is the forecast, what we are expecting up and down the coast from parts of Georgia through the mid-Atlantic and even southern Northeast. Plenty of minor to moderate flooding in those coastal areas. Forecast wind gusts for parts of South Jersey. It's going to be tomorrow afternoon that things pick up. You can see Cape May gusting as high as 30 miles an hour. Mike?
Well, you probably noticed.
And thunderstorms are still out there. Parts of Kansas and now Oklahoma where we've got active severe and tornado warnings. Wichita, you've had one round roll through. Now some heavy rain coming back into play. But at this point, it's not as much flash flood warnings as it is severe warnings that we've got. Here in Harper County, this is northern Oklahoma, Roston under a tornado warning. This would be off to the west of Buffalo, likely also getting some big hail out of this storm. So that area of rotation just off towards the east of Gate. This is moving off towards the south. So we've got to watch areas to the south and east of Gate, Oklahoma. A southerly flow that's been on the return, so that has kept us on the warmer side, increased our moisture. You notice where the thunderstorms have rolled through, temperatures have dropped, but where they are still currently, doing their thing, we've got nothing but warmth to deal with. And we're going to keep it on the warmer side through the middle of the country. Expect highs 5 to 10 degrees below average in the east, but 5, 10, even 15 degrees above average through the central U.S. And that becomes more and more noticeable, more and more prominent by the end of the week and the start of the weekend. So Friday, especially into Saturday, we've got a lot of areas, especially right there through the Midwest and Plains, that are going to be well above average for this time of year. So we get into week 3 of college football, and it could be pretty uncomfortable at some of those games. Columbia, Missouri is one of them, expecting those temps in the low to mid 90s as Louisiana comes to take on Mizzou. Mike?
All right, Alex, thank you. Coming up, a look at
Fresco. Later in the week, you may be taking it back inside and also, lowering the thermostat again? You're like, it got a little warm. We said don't get fooled by false fall, and sure enough, summer's making its presence felt back into parts of the Midwest again this week. Forecast highs compared to your average. Average high is 84. So tomorrow we stay slightly below the mark, but we're ticking back up. Wednesday, 88, 89 Thursday, low 90s Friday, mid 90s on Saturday. So some much warmer days coming, especially into the start of the weekend. I know that's when everybody has outdoor plans. Everybody's going to the big stadiums to sit amongst 90,000 or 40,000 or whatever, how big the stadium is, of your closest friends. And nothing like having a temperature of 94 while you do that, right? Although, oh gosh, I'm trying to think what's the worst. I still think 94 would be worse than 40 and rain because when you're cold, you can kind of warm up. When you're hot, you're just hot, man. Jet stream dips over the Great Lakes Northeast, going to keep any of that cool air farther to the north. So we're really talking Canada and closer to the Great Lakes, northern sections of New York and New England. Notice that warmth starting to extend back into sections of the Mid-South. But later in the week, there goes our ridge really building in. So any troughing out to the west, ridge up near the U.S.-Canada border. So Rapid City and Minneapolis, you're back into the 80s, 90s for Oklahoma City and Dodge City, 90s in Kansas City, 80s in Louisville. Across the board, a lot of those reds on the map. Now, average last 90-degree day in the Midwest, we're past the mark for Minneapolis and Chicago, as well as Indianapolis. We're approaching the time of Kansas City and St. Louis. Can't have them in October, not unheard of, but we're about there.
frustration, but we're going to help you through that forecast this week. Thanks for staying with us on Weather Unfiltered. I'm Mike Bettis.
I'm Alex Wilson, of course, with our expert, Dr. Rick Knabb, our voice of Florida here tonight.
Yeah,
it has been tough.
Yeah, I grew up in the rainfall state, too. And usually you could count on the afternoons, not every afternoon, but most afternoons to be stormy. But with these fronts that have been sitting over Florida for weeks and weeks, it's been rainy in the mornings. It's been rainy overnight. it's been persistently bad, and you don't even have the mornings with sunshine. But it's unusual. But think of how cool and pleasant it has been, like in the Midwest, for weeks. It started in August. It's the same pattern that's been causing the problems in Florida.
The haves and the have-nots.
Seriously.
For sure.
All right, well, let's start things off with the have-nots. What do you say? Let's just ideal. That onshore flow, pretty strong, too. So in Jacksonville, you can see the wind-blown rain, because when we get these showers, yeah, the thunderstorms produce gusty winds, but we've had gusty winds across the board today. And so coastal flood advisories are in effect through Wednesday. Areas down around Flagler Beach up through parts of the state of Georgia, including Brunswick and northward. Now, wind speeds right now, they've been especially gusty in places like St. Augustine, gusting to 30 miles an hour with sustained winds over 20 miles an hour. Very similar up towards Fernandina Beach. You've got an 18-mile-per-hour wind gusting to 25 miles an hour. Same for St. Simon's, gust to 25 miles an hour there, and in Jacksonville. So winds are gusty and they are onshore. So that is bringing us that coastal flood concern. Wind speeds right now farther to the north, Beaufort, North Carolina, gusting to 25 miles an hour. Again, same as Jacksonville. No gusts in places like Myrtle Beach currently. But when we look towards the high tide, because remember, we've got the onshore flow, so we have to pay attention to when high for those coastal flooding issues. We're looking at Tuesday morning, 10:25 a.m. So just before the 10:30, the bottom of the hour, that's when we're going to be watching for high tide in combo with those strong onshore winds. And tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, we've got winds across the board somewhere between 20 and 30 miles an hour. Those are the gusts for most areas. Some spots a little less, but I would expect in most areas that's what we're looking at. By tomorrow evening, winds gusting to 25 miles an hour at Virginia Beach, at 20 miles an hour in Charleston, all the way up to Atlantic City, New Jersey as well. Now, looking at the northeast mid-Atlantic beaches, you guys see the winds pick up on Tuesday. So especially for the afternoon, Martha's Vineyard now gusting to 25 miles an hour, along with Toms River, New Jersey, Wildwood gusting to around 30 miles an hour. Late week, by the way, we're still windy. We've got winds gusting 20 miles an hour in Martha's Vineyard, Toms River, and also in Ocean City, Maryland. So we've got periods of stronger winds here in our coastal areas. And when we look at our coastal gauges, the forecast for flooding, many across the mid-Atlantic and northeast beaches will be in that minor to moderate flood stage. Mike?
Thank you for that.
Okay, so they put in the script what they've got. Fried pies, cookie butter beignets. Stop what you're doing. Cookie butter beignets. One time I bought this stuff that was like cookie butter and like Nutella mixed together. I could never buy that again because I can't be trusted around it. So cookie butter beignets, you know those are good. State Fair food, that's we don't even want to know what's in this, how many calories, I don't want to know. But I want to eat it. We look at what's happening right now. Parts of Kansas into Oklahoma, big-time thunderstorms. So again, outdoor activities, not a night for it in these areas because these storms are producing hail, gusty winds, and in some cases they are warned for tornadoes. Here in Ochiltree County, this is in Oklahoma, well to the west of Woodward. Tornado warning in effect until 7:30 local time. This storm is moving off to the south. You can see that area of rotation right here off to the south and east of Perryton. We've got another tornado warning not far from there. Farther to the north, it's south and west of Buffalo. This one also moving due south. So right over 270 right now. Highway 270 would be a spot to watch. Shattuck, you may be in line for this farther down the road. Right now, you are not under the warning, but you want to keep an eye on this storm. Southerly flow has returned. That has kept things warmer today. That's given us the moisture. So these storms have had the energy to work with. You can see in the aftermath of the storms, though, we've got that cooler pool with temperatures back into the 70s in many of these areas. But out ahead of the storms, plenty of warmth. 5 to 10 degree below average temperatures across the east. Meanwhile, the middle of the country, warm is the name of the game. We continue to warm up here. 5 to 15 degrees above average on Thursday. By the end of the week and weekend, we've got highs into the 90s. So some of these areas going to be really uncomfortable, really warm for those football games, including Missouri hosting Louisiana. How about afternoon temps on Saturday in the low to mid 90s? Bread in one piece. Thanks, lady. Whew. That was soaking.
That was ugly.
Yeah, that was not, that was like there's like rain and then there's like not messing around.
We are not sugarcoating it. Savannah, you've looked better, no doubt about that. Welcome back, everyone. This is Weather Unfiltered. I'm Mike Bettis.
I'm Alex Wilson. Dr. Rick Knabb here as well. He's been telling us all about the Southeast and how rainy and how ick it's been, and, you know, stuff like what they saw in Savannah. South Florida's gotten it to keep it. And then Mother Nature snatches it from you and says, no, we have to go back to the 90s. But maybe then we'll get cool. It's that pattern, right? You get a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Mother Nature likes to throw some curveballs at us in the plains. St. Louis average high this time of year is 84. We stay slightly below the mark tomorrow, but we're back to the upper 80s Wednesday and Thursday. We're in the low 90s on Friday, mid 90s on Saturday. The hottest day of the week, of course, college football day. I have no idea how those guys get out there in all those pads and run around. Sitting in the stands at 94 degrees is brutal. I don't know. Hats off to them. Jet stream way up to the north, so that's keeping any of the cool air really locked up over parts of the north, the Great Lakes. So highs of 60s, you got to go up to get those. Back to the 70s in Chicago and Indianapolis. Again, low 80s tomorrow in St. Louis. But things continue to change through the week. So we get that troughing across the west, more ridging in the middle of the country, and that's going to help to promote more warmth. High pressure builds in. We get that southerly flow. We get not just more warmth, but also more moisture, so more humid too as you're sitting in the stands at those Friday night football games or Saturday games. Look at these numbers on Friday. We've got 90s all the way up to like Kansas City, 80s, North Platte and Rapid City. Rapid City, we were really talking about your lows in the 40s. Goodbye to those. We are back to the 80s and 90s. Minneapolis, your average last 90-degree day would come in late August. Same for Chicago, early September for Indianapolis, mid-September for Kansas City and St. Louis. Not out of the question, though, to see it later.
Month and a half, 2 months.
Down. Yeah, no, that one spot on my hair still hasn't tried.
Yeah, so it's been the summer and early fall of those bleeping fronts in Florida. Did you know that fronts bleeped?
We do now. We share your frustration, Florida. We'll talk more about your forecast coming up. Thank you for staying with us. This is Weather Unfiltered. I'm Mike Bettis.
I'm Alex Wilson, hurricane expert and Florida expert, Dr. Knabb. Well, you know how everybody feels because it just kind of feels like it's been a little lopsided when it comes to more rain, less sun.
Yeah, it's not just been the afternoon thunderstorms. It's been the persistence, the day and night part of it. But not every part of Florida has been the same. We've been talking about how Tampa, Tallahassee, the Panhandle been comparatively dry, but places like Fort Myers, Naples, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, the southern part of the state especially, taking it on the chin.
Speaking of South Florida, when do you say we go there?
What do you know about dealing with hurricanes?
I would say, special attention at that point.
I'd be like, he's cool.
No, I'm one of the people, Mike.
Yeah, that's it.
He's getting his
Yeah. Hurricanes, I didn't just forecast them, I lived them.
God.
You know what? Good for you.
Yeah.
But it does feel like, though, in South Florida. Like
Coastal areas. Now, Jacksonville, Florida, in addition to, you know, the coastal spots nearby, just in the city, expect wind-blown rain, thunderstorms, bringing heavy rainfall rates. So when it's not just, you know, light showers, they're going to be heavy downpours piling up there in Duval County. There's also coastal flood advisory. So we look towards the coastline, Georgia and Florida, these areas, because of that onshore flow. We've got to watch the high tide times. Right now, look at these gusts. So we've got sustained winds anywhere between 10 and 20 miles per hour. Gusts, however, have been between 20 and 30 miles an hour. Earlier in St. Augustine, right now you got a little bit of a break, but Jacksonville, Fernandina Beach, and St. Simon's Island, all in that 20 to 30 mile an hour gust range this evening. Wind speeds right now, we've got winds of 15 miles an hour in Beaufort, North Carolina, gusts to 26 miles an hour. And again, Jacksonville has remained gusty, but with that onshore flow, have to watch high tide time. Of course, that is the coastal flooding concern time or main time frame. And for a place like Mayport, Florida, where look at that wind coming right in, we've got Tuesday just before 10:30 as your, you know, time to watch with the high tide working in. Atlantic City all the way down to Jacksonville. Tomorrow morning, winds still gusty, anywhere from 20 to 30 miles an hour for most areas. And it's not just tomorrow. We're going to stay gusty gusty at times through the week. So tomorrow evening, mid-Atlantic all the way down to the southeast, still in that 15 to 25, even 30 mile per hour gust range. Here's a closer look at the northeast and mid-Atlantic beaches. By tomorrow evening, Martha's Vineyard gusting to 25 miles an hour. Same for Ocean City. Wildwood, you could be gusting to 30 miles an hour. So again, those winds will definitely be kicked up. And even on Friday, still on the gusty side, 15 to 20 mile an hour gusts for most areas from New England into the northeast. Coastal gauges and flood. This is a forecast, so what we expect, plenty in minor to moderate flood stage, Mike.
All right, Alex, thank you for that. So here's the...
Send it to me and tell me how it was. I want to live vicariously through you. That sounds amazing. State fairs have the best. Baseball stadiums and state fairs. You're never going to find like amalgamations of food like you will there. Now, the storms have moved generally out of Kansas. Still have some heavy rain well to the south of Wichita, but right now we've got plenty of warnings into the state of Oklahoma and also North Texas, including 2 tornado warnings. So this tornado warning for Ochiltree County in Texas. We've also got a severe thunderstorm warning for the hail potential and a flash flood warning because heavy rain has come down. And you notice there are plenty of areas where we've got several warnings overlaid upon one another. So area of rotation off to the west of 83. That storm is moving off to the south. And then we've got another tornado warning, this one right out of Oklahoma into the state of Texas. We've got some gusty winds north of Shattuck. We've got hail out there as well. And very heavy rain has prompted some flooding problems. So please be aware of that if you are going to be traveling in any of these areas. Rain cooled in the wake of these thunderstorms, but out ahead of it, there is plenty of warmth for the storms to work with. We've had warmth and moisture, and that's helped to fuel things today. And more warmth on the way when we look at the forecast for the middle of the country into tomorrow and the second half of the week. By Thursday, a lot of areas are above average. By this weekend, well above average. When we're back to the 80s and 90s for much of the region. So not necessarily comfortable sweatshirt weather at those football games in Columbia, Missouri, as Mizzou hosts Louisiana, low 90s. Does it have a radio? Does it have a window? All right. I'm fine.
It's not a Lambo.
Yeah, no. Alex Olson not driving a Lambo. No. Find me out and about not in a Lambo. Yeah.
So tonight on the show, what we've learned is Nav's driving his sedan.
Yep.
You said you're driving your you said not sexy vehicle.
Correct.
With
it's
4
basically
wheels.
a wood-paneled station. Actually, that's sexier.
Yes. And like
One would argue.
An old Woody.
Yeah, that would actually, like, that would have like a vibe to it.
Yes.
My car is, it's fine.
Yeah.
It works.
As the kids say, meh.
Yeah, it's mid.
It's
if that, let's be real.
What's less than mid? What do kids call less than mid?
Sub-mid.
Sus?
Yeah.
Your car is sus.
It's kind of, I'm just like an old lady now. Now I'm just like, there's like that old lady. I just saw something on.
You're owning that, so it's okay.
Oh, for sure. No, no one's going to go like put their sunglasses down at my vehicle. They're not like, whoa, look at that thing.
Hello.
Hey, lady, nice. The next 5 in St. Louis, and it's like a step ladder. Each and every day we get warmer and warmer and warmer. 94 by Saturday. Average high this time of year is 84. So we're going to be 10 degrees above the mark just in time for all those games, whether they're Friday night football games or Saturday college games. I think the Friday night football games are going to be a little more manageable. Let's be real. That's at least in the evening. Saturday, you got like a noon or 3:30 game. Brutal. 90s, sunshine. You're just going to sit there and bake on those metal seats in the bleachers. Cooler highs in place, though, tomorrow, especially up near the Great Lakes and northern sections of the Northeast. But look what happens by the end of the week. There's our ridge in the jet stream really settled in, and that's going to allow those temperatures to continue to warm up. So 80s and a lot of 90s out there. Those are your forecast highs through the end of the week. Now, average last 90-degree day for many of these cities has already happened or is about to. Kansas City and St. Louis, mid-September, on average, your last 90-degree day. That's not to say it can't happen later. How about plenty of Octobers, even around Halloween for Kansas City and St. Louis? But it becomes less and less common the later, obviously, we get. Chicago, you're not going to be at 90, but mid-80s by Friday. Average high this time of year is in the upper 70s. And how about Champaign? We're at Memorial Stadium. We're going to be watching the Illini host the Broncos of Western Michigan. Awesome T-shirt, by the way. We've got 80s at 6 o'clock on Saturday.